Picture this. A repair shop is closing up for the night. Out front, a customer just dropped $6,000 fixing the air suspension on a 5-year-old luxury crossover, a crossover that is going to need the exact same repair again in about 18 months. Meanwhile, out back, the mechanic who just did that job is climbing into his own vehicle to drive home, and it is not a shiny new crossover. It is a boxy, slab-sided, almost comically unfashionable SUV that is old enough to vote. It looks like a refrigerator on wheels. His neighbors probably laugh at it. But he does not care, because he knows something that most car shoppers never bother to learn. Under that ugly sheet metal sits an engine and a drivetrain that were built in a completely different era. An era before manufacturers chased every last mile per gallon with turbochargers, direct injection, and continuously variable transmissions that grenade themselves before the odometer even hits 100,000 miles. This is not a coincidence, and it is not nostalgia. It is math. It is the simple, brutal math of moving parts, timing components, and long-term ownership costs that mechanics see with their own eyes, every single day, on lifts, in parking lots, and in tow yards. Ask any technician who has spent a decade with their hands inside modern engine bays, and they will tell you the same thing. A turbocharged 4-cylinder crossover engine might feel punchy on a test drive, but it is also juggling boost pressure, intercooler plumbing, a smaller oil sump running hotter than it should, and in many cases a direct injection system quietly coking up the intake valves from the very first year of ownership. None of that shows up on a window sticker. None of that shows up in a glossy magazine review. It only shows up later on a lift, with a customer standing there holding a repair estimate that costs more than the ugly old SUV parked 2 spots down. That is exactly the kind of knowledge this countdown is built on. We are not chasing internet hearsay or forum rumors here. Every engine code, every horsepower figure, every torque number, and every transmission pairing in this video comes straight from the manufacturer's own published specifications and documented engineering histories. So buckle up, because we are about to walk through 5 specific, verified, real-world SUVs that the people who actually fix cars for a living are buying with their own hard-earned money. Here is the premise of this whole countdown. The modern SUV market has become an arms race of complexity. Turbocharged 4-cylinders are doing the work that naturally aspirated 6-cylinders and 8-cylinders used to do, except now they are doing it under far more heat and far more pressure, with tiny oil galleys and plastic components that were never designed to survive 200,000 miles. Air ride suspension systems, once reserved for Range Rovers and Cadillacs, are now showing up on mainstream crossovers, and every single air strut failure is a repair bill that can run well into 4 figures. Meanwhile, sitting quietly on used car lots across America, ignored because they look dated, boxy, and frankly a little bit dorky, are SUVs that were engineered in an entirely different philosophy. Overbuilt iron block engines, timing chains, or well-documented timing belt intervals, instead of temperamental electronics. Transmissions that were tuned, tested, and mass-produced for millions of trucks, not rushed to market to hit a fuel economy target. Think about everything packed into a typical new SUV today. Continuously variable transmissions with belts and pulleys instead of gears, engineered to shave a fraction of a mile per gallon off the EPA sticker, but with a well-documented habit of failing catastrophically well before the engine ever shows its age. Stop-start systems cycling the starter motor thousands of extra times over the life of the vehicle. Touchscreens the size of a tablet, controlling climate, drivetrain, and safety systems that can turn a $50 sensor problem into a multiple $1,000 software and hardware headache. None of this existed, or existed in nowhere near the same volume, on the 5 vehicles we are about to cover. Mechanics do not buy cars based on how they look in a showroom. They buy cars based on what they see torn apart on their own workbenches, and that insider knowledge is exactly what we are handing you today. Before we drop into the countdown, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, because if you want more of this kind of insider, mechanic-approved car buying knowledge, this is exactly the channel for it. Alright, let's get into it. Kicking things off at number 5, we have the 2007 to 2011 Honda Element EX with all-wheel drive. And yes, we are aware this thing looks like a toaster that learned to drive. That nickname has followed the Element since the day it launched, but underneath that polarizing shape is one of the most beloved 4-cylinder engines Honda has ever built, the K24. In this Element application, the 2.4-liter dual overhead cam K24 produces 166 horsepower at 5,800 RPM and 161 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. It uses a timing chain, not a timing belt, which means no scheduled belt replacement bill lurking down the road. It runs multi-port fuel injection instead of modern direct injection, which means none of the carbon buildup on the intake valves that plague so many newer direct-injected engines. It is naturally aspirated, so there is no turbocharger to fail, no wastegate to stick, and no intercooler plumbing to crack with age. You can option it with either a 5-speed automatic or a 5-speed manual, both of which are mechanically simple and extremely well documented. On today's market, in August of 2026, A clean EX model with all-wheel drive typically runs between $6,500 and $11,500, which is shockingly affordable for something this durable. Parts availability sits at 5 out of 5 stars, because the K24 was also used across the Honda Accord, the Honda CR-V, and multiple Acura models, so RockAuto, AutoZone, Napa, and Advance Auto Parts are all stocked to the ceiling with cheap components, and salvage yards are full of donor elements and Accords for anything you cannot find new. Maintenance costs are rated 5 out of 5 stars as well, because labor times are short and the engine bay is enormous and easy to work in. Mechanics by the element because it routinely blows past 300,000 miles on nothing more than oil changes, timing chain guides that rarely need attention, and basic tune-ups. It holds its resale value shockingly well for something this unattractive, and its electronic complexity is close to zero compared to anything rolling off a lot today. It is ugly, it is boxy, and it might just outlive every single one of us. Moving on to number 4, we head to Nissan and the 2001 to 2004 Xterra, specifically in XE or SE trim, powered by the 3.3-liter VG33e V6. This engine uses a cast iron block for serious long-term durability, paired with a timing belt that needs to be replaced on a documented interval, so it does require a bit more owner discipline than a timing chain engine, but when maintained, it becomes nearly unkillable. Output is rated at approximately 170 horsepower at 4,800 RPM and 202 pound-feet of torque at 2,800 RPM. And remember, this is a naturally aspirated engine, so there is no forced induction hardware to eventually fail. The VG33e was also used in the Nissan Frontier and the Nissan Pathfinder, which means mechanical parts are inexpensive and available at basically every auto parts counter in the country. The Xterra rides on true body-on-frame construction, the same fundamental architecture used in serious off-road trucks, rather than the unibody crossover platforms that dominate today's SUV market and tend to be far more expensive to repair after any kind of structural damage. You can find these with either a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic, and current market pricing in August of 2026 lands between $3,500 to $7,500, making it one of the cheapest entry points on this entire list. Parts availability earns a full 5 out of 5 stars, and maintenance costs are rated low across the board, because most repairs on this platform require nothing more than basic hand tools and a bit of patience, with plenty of room to work under that hood. Mechanics gravitate toward the Xterra because the VG33e is considered one of Nissan's toughest V6 engines ever produced. The body-on-frame layout shrugs off abuse that would total a modern crossover, and the suspension and steering components are cheap enough that a full front-end refresh will not wreck your wallet. It might look like a plastic-covered off-road toy from the early 2000s, but underneath, it is a genuinely tough little truck. Now we escalate to number 3, and this is where things start to get seriously impressive from an engineering standpoint. The 2002 to 2009 Chevrolet Trailblazer LT, equipped with General Motors' legendary Atlas 4.2-liter inline-6, internally coded the LL8. This engine is a genuine anomaly in American automotive history. Instead of the usual V6 or V8 formula, General Motors built an all-aluminum, dual overhead cam inline-6 specifically to replace the aging 4.3-liter V6, and the result was one of the most underrated engines this country has ever mass-produced. Early production models, from 2002 through 2005, were rated between 270 and 275 horsepower with 275 pound-feet of torque, and later revisions, starting in 2006, pushed output all the way up to 291 horsepower. This engine uses a timing chain, not a belt, so there is no scheduled belt replacement to worry about, and 90% of its peak torque is available shockingly low in the RPM range, which means it drives with the effortless, low-stress pull of something far larger than a straight 6. It is paired with the 4L60E automatic transmission, a unit so widely used across General Motors' truck and SUV lineup that transmission shops can rebuild it in their sleep. Because General Motors built the Trailblazer on the shared GM T360 platform, alongside the GMC Envoy, the Buick Rainier, the Oldsmobile Bravada, and even the Saab 9-7X, hundreds of thousands of these vehicles were produced, and nearly every mechanical part remains available both new and used. In today's market, expect to pay between $2,800 and $6,500 for a clean example. Parts availability is rated an outstanding 5 out of 5 stars, and maintenance costs are rated very low, since salvage yard parts are genuinely everywhere across the country. Mechanics love this platform because the Atlas Inline-6 is extremely durable, the engine bay is spacious and easy to work in, replacement engines are cheap when you can find them, suspension components are inexpensive, and despite being a 2000s-era General Motors product, the electronics are dramatically simpler than anything wearing a bow tie today. At number 2, we are staying in the exact same engine bay, but switching badges. The 2002 to 2009 GMC Envoy SLT, powered by that very same Atlas 4.2-liter LL8 inline-6, with the very same timing chain, the very same naturally aspirated output, and the very same 4L60E automatic transmission. So why does the Envoy earn its own separate spot on this list instead of just riding the Trailblazer's coattails? because it shares nearly every mechanical component not just with the Trailblazer, but with the Buick Rainier, the Oldsmobile Bravada, and the Saab 9-7X as well, which means mechanical parts for this engine and drivetrain combination are genuinely among the cheapest and most widely available in the entire American used car market. The Envoy leans slightly more upscale and comfortable than the Trailblazer, making it a favorite as a long-distance highway cruiser, while still hiding that same bulletproof engine underneath. Current pricing in August of 2026 runs from $3,000 to $6,800. Parts availability is rated an outstanding 5 out of 5 stars, and maintenance costs are rated very low, thanks to excellent access under the hood and consistently low labor times at independent shops. Mechanics buy the Envoy for the same fundamental reasons they buy the Trailblazer: proven Atlas Inline 6 reliability, extremely affordable used pricing, easy engine access, and literally millions of interchangeable General Motors parts sitting in salvage yards from coast to coast. It might wear slightly nicer badges and a touch more chrome, but mechanically, it is the same tank underneath. And now, we arrive at the Holy Grail. Number 1 on this list, and quite possibly the single most bulletproof full-size SUV that money can buy on a shoestring budget, the 2001 to 2007 Toyota Sequoia SR5. Under the hood sits Toyota's legendary 4.7-liter 2UZ-FE V8, a cast-iron block engine so respected in enthusiast and mechanic circles that it is frequently mentioned in the same breath as Toyota's million-mile Tundra pickups, because it is essentially the exact same engine. Early Sequoia models, from 2001 through 2004, were rated at 240 horsepower and 315 pound-feet of torque. Starting in 2005, Toyota introduced variable valve timing to this engine, pushing output up to 282 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque, before a shift to revised SAE testing standards in 2006 and 2007 saw the official rating settle at 273 horsepower and 314 pound-feet of torque. Regardless of exactly which year you land on, the story is the same: a low-revving, high-torque, cast-iron block V8 engineered from day one for towing, hauling, and absorbing abuse without complaint. Early models used a 4-speed automatic transmission, while later years upgraded to a 5-speed automatic, and both are considered exceptionally dependable. Because this engine and much of the Sequoia's underlying architecture is directly shared with the Toyota Tundra and the Toyota Land Cruiser, two of the most legendarily long-lived vehicles ever built, Toyota continues to support many original equipment components today, while aftermarket suppliers cover virtually every maintenance item you could possibly need. Current market pricing in August of 2026 ranges from $5,500 to $11,500, an almost absurd amount of full-size, body-on-frame, V8 towing capability for the money. Parts availability is rated an excellent 5 out of 5 stars, while maintenance costs are rated 4 out of 5 stars, only because the timing belt service interval on this engine is slightly more involved and slightly more expensive than the timing chain engines earlier on this list. But major internal failures on this engine are exceptionally rare, and it is not uncommon at all to find these Sequoias rolling past 400,000 miles with nothing more than routine maintenance and, of course, that timing belt kept on schedule. Mechanics buy the Sequoia because the 2UZ-FE is one of the most legendary V8 engines Toyota has ever produced, because the drivetrain is essentially bulletproof, because towing capability remains excellent even decades later, and because when it comes to full-size body-on-frame durability, this might be one of the single longest-lasting trucks Toyota has ever built. It is boxy. It is dated. Nobody is cross-shopping it against a brand-new Grand Wagoneer at the dealership. But mechanics know exactly what is sitting under that hood, and that is precisely why so many of them own one themselves. So there you have it, 5 so-called ugly SUVs that the people who fix cars for a living are quietly buying up for themselves, while everyone else chases the latest turbocharged crossover straight into an extended warranty they are absolutely going to need. From the shoebox-styled Honda Element all the way up to that legendary Toyota Sequoia V8, every single vehicle on this list proves the same point again and again: simple, overbuilt, naturally aspirated engineering tends to outlive flashy complexity every single time. Now we want to hear from you down in the comments. Which one of these 5 would you actually daily drive for the next 200,000 miles, and did we miss an ugly, overbuilt bargain that deserves a spot on this list? Drop it below. We read every single comment. Until next time, keep it running, keep it simple, and we will see you in the next one.